Welcome to the Crunch McDabble Show. I'm your host, Crunch McDabbles. This is the only show where we break down the Pathfinder 2nd edition rules into tender little morsels of deliciousness. Today's show, can a cloistered cleric out DPS a power attack fighter? I love melee clerics. I've always felt that a cleric should be able to fight so that they don't have to blow through valuable spells that probably should be reserved for saving the party. 2nd edition really challenged this, though. The cleric is a clear spellcasting class with some combat potential. Today's show we're going to explore how much combat potential is there and what spells and feats unlock it. And what better way to find out than to go up against the King of DPS, the power attack fighter. So let's get down to it. In this corner, he picks up crit hits like a diner waitress picks up tips. He is the power attacking, Greatpick wielding proprietor of Pierce, Elthier the fighter. And in this corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare Gorham is the god of war. Shantaine, the butcher of Magnamar. Oh, barber. I'm sorry, the barber of Magnamar. That's a fine occupation too. Not as menacing, but it's a fine occupation. And we start at level 1. The fighter steps up first, Greatpick in hand. He has an 18 strength. He has power attack and he's gonna use it. It takes 2 actions. The Greatpick is a D10 weapon with the fatal trait, so it's 5.5 average damage per hit, but power attack adds an extra weapon die on each hit, plus his 18 strength for 4 more damage for 15 damage per hit. His critical hits are fatal and they do a D12 of damage. A second D12 for power attack, plus 4 for strength is 17. Double that for the crit is 34 damage, and add in the D12 fatal die for 6.5 more damage. That's 40.5 average damage on a crit hit. We average that out against an armor class of 18, and we get 11.6 average damage for the power attack. And with his third action, he makes his second attack at minus 10, and this still adds in 4.2 more average damage, bringing his total for the round up to 15.8. And he can do that round in and round out. It's extremely consistent and doesn't depend on any tricks or gimmicks. It's just damage, sweet, consistent damage. The cloistered cleric steps forward. He has his robes billowing around him and his greatsword in his hand, like some sort of ominous minister of destruction. He has a 16 strength, and with his first 2 actions, he casts a spell, magic weapon, yep. That gives him a +1 item bonus to attacks and an extra die of damage on each hit. So his hits now do 2d12 plus 3 for his strength for 16 average damage per hit, and double that on crits for 32 critical damage for an average on that one strike of 8.8. On the next round, he uses another spell slot, True Strike. On his next attack, he rolls twice and takes a higher amount. True Strike might be an underrated first level spell. It's an untyped bonus, so it's going to stack with everything, and it's quite a big bonus. Rolling 2 d20s and taking the higher result works like this. Here are the 2 d20s, horizontally and vertically, and in the middle, the 400 possible outcomes. If I roll a 2 on this dice and a 6 on this dice, I'm going to take the 6. Then you add up all these numbers in here in the middle and then divide by 400 and you get 13.8. But then you have to remember that a regular D20 gives a 10.5 average. So the difference between those two is 3.3, meaning it's more or less a +3 on your roll, which stacks with everything, but it's an action to use and a spell slot, but it's a nice bonus. But he doesn't stop with the True Strike spell. He casts another spell, this time his focus spell, Weapon Surge. It adds another die of damage, and it adds a +1 status bonus to his attack. Average damage on a hit is 22.5, and damage on a crit is 45. Plus his attack bonus on this hit is higher than the fighter. And he gets 20 average damage in round 2, surging past the fighter in 1 round with 1 attack. But then he drops off to 14.3 per round, while the magic weapon is still up, and lower than that in all subsequent fights until he rests. Moving on to level 6. The fighter advanced to master proficiency at level 5, and at level 6 he takes the feat Furious Focus, adding a better 2 hit on the second attack. He also now has a +1 Striking Greatpick. The Striking Greatpick has an extra die of damage, plus the extra die of damage from power attack, +4 from strength, and we have 20.5 average damage on a hit. The critical hits are on a whole new level. 2 d12s from the Striking Rune, another d12 from the power attack, plus strength, all that times 2, and add in that fatal d12 die for a total of 53.5 average damage on a crit. The 2-action power attack now averages 21 average damage, plus the third attack, now at -5, adds in 8 more damage for 29 for the round, and that is round in and round out all the time. The Cloistered Cleric moved his strength up to 18 at level 5. At level 2, he took Emblazoned Armament for a +1 status bonus on damage. At level 4, he took Channel Smite, and at level 6, he took Harming Hands, a first level cleric feat. He also has a +1 Striking Greatsword, so he doesn't need to cast Magic Weapon anymore. So he starts his round casting True Strike, 1 action, and then using a Channel Smite, 2 actions, but Channel Smite includes an attack. Now his hits on that Smite do 2d12 for the Striking Rune, +1 for the Emblazoned Armament, +4 for strength, and 3d10 negative damage from the harm spell for 34.5 average damage on a hit and 69 damage for a crit, just shaving off enemies with oozing negative damage on each hit for a few rounds, for 3 rounds in fact, of True Strike, and then however many rounds of the Divine Font he has, and then it's over. Then he goes back to much less than the fighter with 16 average damage per hit. But the cleric did get close to the fighter there for a while. A quick rules interruption here. Originally, I didn't double the negative harm damage on critical hits with the Channel Smite. I guess it was an homage to the Pathfinder 1 rules, but after scrutinizing this, the Channel Smite says that the negative damage is added on to your weapon damage, and under critical hits, it says that pretty much double everything except things that are specific to critical hits, like the extra die of damage on a fatal weapon or the persistent damage on some critical hits. So it's another thing where the second edition is a little different from the first edition. And at level 13 now, the fighter says, "Puny cleric, your god is a joke. I'll teach you what battle is." The fighter has a 20 strength now, and he has a +2 greater striking Greatpick, yeah, and he has legendary proficiency with it. He took the feat Brutal Finish now, so once per turn he can score damage even on a miss. He's now like a beacon of pure destruction. Power attacks do 3d10 damage for the Striking Rune, and 2 more d10s for power attack for 32.5 average damage on a hit. Critical hits go berserk with all that as d12s, plus another d12 fatal die for a total of 81.5 average damage on a crit. The second attack at -5 uses the Brutal Finish and misses, even score 5.5 damage, bringing the average for the second attack to a respectable 21.5, and the total average for the round to 66.4, and he gets that round in and round out. The cleric steps forward unsteadily. He seems defeated. He spent his feats on Healing Hands and Versatile Font, nothing that even helps his combat power. He didn't even take a new greatsword when they offered him one. He bows low to the fighter and then indifferently drops his greatsword to the ground, and it clangs steel against stone, ringing throughout the hall. He says, "Clearly no mortal can beat you. It's a good thing I'm no longer fettered by mortality." With that, he spends 2 actions casting Righteous Might. The strength of the god of war surges through him, armor forms around him, and in his hand a new greatsword, gleaming brilliantly and cascading with anarchic sparks. His first swing on round 1 carves in 15.1 average damage. The next round he casts a Heightened Heroism, adding in a +2 status bonus to hit, and he carves out another attack with 19.3 average damage. And then he begins. He deals out True Strikes, and channel smites, now dealing 7d10 negative damage on hits, bringing his average for those 3 rounds up to 66. And after the true strikes and channel smites, the damage goes down to 38.1, so not as great as a fighter, but overall it's kind of cool. It's pretty good. At level 20, the fighter steps forward. It's time to end this. He moves his strength to 22. He has a +3 major striking Greatpick. He takes weapon supremacy, gaining another attack each round. Now power attacks deal 44.5 average damage just on a hit, and critical hits slam down 109.5 average damage. He makes his second attack at -5, adding in more damage, and then his third attack using his bonus action from weapon supremacy. Even at -10, he adds in brutal finish to turn all those misses into 11s. His average damage for the round, 87.7 every round. The cleric says, "I'm done toying with you." He casts a heightened heroism for +3 to hit on the first round, and then the next round he casts the 10th level spell, Avatar. He's now size huge with a 70-foot movement, 15-foot reach, and attacks with his greatsword at +33 to hit and 6d12 +6 damage. He casts true strikes and channel smites, now dealing 11d10 negative damage on each hit for a total of 137 damage per round for 3 rounds. Then the damage drops to 83.3 for the rest of the combat. Still pretty good. Conclusion: can the cleric out DPS a power attack fighter? Nope, not really. Occasionally they can burst past them a little for a few rounds here and there, but overall, not really. As far as just using the cleric's own feats to keep up on damage, Emblazoned Armament adds that +1 damage, which isn't much, and Blazoned Energy at level 8 adds a d4 or d6 of energy damage. That would stack with whatever runes you had, which is nice, but it's not that much damage. Divine Weapon at level 6 lets you add in a d4 or d6 of damage when you cast a spell in a round, which would work great with casting true strikes each round, but again, it's not much. It's not enough extra damage to keep up with the fighter. Channel Smite was the one feat that really piled in the damage and made this whole thing competitive. The problem there, well, really there are 2 problems. First, you have to take more feats. You would have to take Versatile Font and Harming Hands in addition to Healing Hands. All those, I'd assume you'd want those. And all that's fine. But then the real problem, you're giving up your Divine Font spells to do damage. And those spells could be cast as heal spells to save the party. I would say no way to this feat. I think it's great for NPC villains, but I would never take this on a cleric build. But the thing is, here's the thing. None of those feats really matter that much after 11. In fact, nothing in your build matters anymore after level 11. Once you get Righteous Might, everything changes for the cleric. Now every fight you cast the spell and boost your armor, boost your damage reduction, add temporary hit points, boost your speed, gain dark vision, and most important, increase your 2-hit and damage. So it doesn't matter what weapon or armor you're wearing, or what your strength or proficiency bonus is, or how many emblazoned armaments you have. So a cloister cleric with an 8 strength is just as good all of a sudden as a war priest with 19 strength and a +2 greater striking weapon. It's a great spell and makes you very competitive with the fighter of the same level. Righteous Might puts the Melee Cleric back on the menu. Instead of channel smiting for your extra damage though, save those for healing. Instead, archetype into something that helps your damage. This Gorum Cleric could archetype into a Mauler and then power attack to get that extra damage. At level 11 with Righteous Might, they would be just as good as the fighter. You could probably stay close with the dual weapon warrior archetype build too. A Pharasma Cleric slashing out 2 dagger attacks each round would be really cool. But even a sword and board cleric in that Righteous Might form is going to add in some decent damage. And at level 20 in Avatar form, it's all over. A Gorum Mauler making power attacks would deal 9d12 +6 damage, and making Mauler avalanche strikes with a 15-foot reach for 6d12 +6 damage per hit would be crazy. I think Gorum would like that. And that is it. I've been your host, Crunch McDoubles. This has been the Crunch McDoubles Show. Please, please, please take all precautions out there because it might be an imaginary world, but the danger is very real.